Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're looking at a rapidly evolving, frankly intense crisis unfolding right now in South Africa. And, it's a situation that really serves as a profound warning for any nation grappling with deep economic desperation. We're going to examine something that's incredibly complex, deeply rooted, and literally reshaping the social fabric of an entire country.
South Africa is on edge. Just picture it. Across multiple townships, shops are being forcibly shut down, doors locked, windows barred, livelihoods just instantly halted. And we're seeing communities that have lived side by side for years suddenly turning on each other. The friction on the ground is absolutely palpable. For a lot of foreign nationals, fear has rapidly become a daily reality, dictating exactly where they can go and what they can do on a day-to-day basis.
So what's at the center of all this national unrest? It's a single, very specific movement called Operation Dudula. It's a group that has grown incredibly fast, and today we're going to break down exactly what it is, how it started, and why it's causing such a massive divide.
Section 1. A Nation at the Edge. Context and Origins.
Now, to really understand the spark here, you have to understand the powder keg. South Africa is facing staggering unemployment right now, hovering around 32%. And if you look at youth unemployment, it's pushing even higher. Add to that some deep economic frustration, and out of that sheer desperation, this movement was born. Actually, the name itself kind of tells you everything you need to know. Dudula literally translates to force out. That definition makes their clear intention absolutely undeniable. Their stated goal? To remove undocumented immigrants from South African communities. There's really no ambiguity in their messaging. But as you know, movements like this rarely just appear overnight. If we trace the timeline, it actually started as an extension of the Put South Africans First campaign, which was mostly living online and spreading like wildfire through social media. But the real catalyst hit in 2021. Following the widespread unrest linked to the jailing of former President Jacob Zuma, community tensions were already sky high. Then, on the anniversary of the historic Soweto uprising, hundreds took to the streets. They marched, accusing foreign nationals of taking jobs, running illegal businesses, and contributing to crime. And just like that, in a single day, this digital frustration transformed into a physical, real-world force on the streets.
Section 2. The Rise of Dudula, Escalation and Action.
Right, so from that initial march in Soweto, the energy shifted and spread incredibly rapidly across major regions like Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. And their tactics on the ground? They quickly became highly organized and aggressive. We're talking about initiating structured community patrols, directly confronting and forcing businesses to close their doors, and actively accusing shop owners of hiring undocumented workers to basically undercut local wages. This went from a protest to highly structured community action targeting very specific economic pain points.
But then, the movement crossed into some highly controversial territory. They began targeting essential services. We actually started seeing reports of protests right outside of hospitals and schools. Activists were physically demanding that foreign nationals be denied access to these basic, everyday services. And then, one particular allegation sparked massive national outrage. There was a report of a child who was unable to access healthcare due to these actions. Just think about the gravity of that for a second. Whether it was an isolated incident or something systemic, the message was clear to everyone watching. The stakes had escalated to a dangerous new level.
Naturally, this level of action triggered a massive response. Civil society groups aggressively pushed back. They began accusing Operation Dudula of directly violating fundamental constitutional rights. We saw court cases filed, and public pressure mounted heavily. But, here's the paradox of movements like this. Controversy fuels visibility. The more legal and social backlash they faced, the more national attention they gained.
Section 3. The Crackdown and Controversy. Two realities.
So let's pause here, because right now there are two completely distinct realities existing simultaneously within the exact same country. On one hand, supporters argue that this is all about survival, right? Jobs and safety. They see it as a long-awaited voice for frustrations that have been ignored for way too long. But on the other hand, critics state that this is just pure discrimination and unconstitutional xenophobia. It's a profound, deep split in how the exact same events are being interpreted by the public.
Section 4. A New Political Force, From Protest to Power.
Now, while the country argued over those two realities, the movement made its most significant pivot yet. Moving into 2025 and 2026, Operation Dudula stopped just protesting, and they actually started seeking power. Enter figures like Zandile Dabula, Under this new wave of leadership, the organization signaled clear intentions to transform into a formal political player. They didn't just want to march against policy anymore, they wanted a seat at the table so they could write the policy themselves.
So suddenly, the government could no longer ignore them. But their response has been incredibly fragmented. You have President Cyril Ramaphosa publicly condemning the vigilante-style actions, with authorities increasing policing in high-risk areas. But meanwhile, officials like Motsoaledi have acknowledged the deep underlying complexity of the undocumented migration that the movement is pointing to. And all the while, the general public has heavily criticized this mixed response, seeing it as far too slow to address the actual reality on the streets. To really grasp why this matters for the future of South Africa, we need to zoom out and look at the macro implications. Because ultimately, this isn't solely a story about immigration. The true fuel for the fire comes from systemic failures: staggeringly high unemployment, deep inequality, and severely limited opportunity. Basically, economic desperation is the actual catalyst here.
There is a really powerful quote that captures this perfectly. Operation Dudula didn't create these problems, it exposed them. When you think about it, this movement is ultimately a symptom. It's a symptom of much larger, systemic, and historical failures to provide economic stability for the nation's citizens.
So where does this leave us? What happens next? Well, if the country's socio-economic pressures aren't resolved, the logical outcomes are pretty severe. If economic conditions don't improve, movements like this are only going to grow stronger. If tensions on the ground continue, conflict inevitably escalates. And if politics becomes deeply involved, which, as we've seen, it absolutely now is, it could entirely reshape South Africa's future.
To some, this movement is a warning sign. To others, it's a solution. But ultimately, it forces a country at a crossroads to answer one fundamental question about identity and survival: who gets to belong?